The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hi everyone, welcome to our Google Sheets Fundamentals course Part 2. This course is for anyone who's looking to take their knowledge of Google Sheets to the next level by learning to manage their sheets with features like sorting, filtering, inserting charts, and even building pivot tables and pivot charts. We're also going to learn advanced functions like VLOOKUP, SUMIF, and even AVERAGEIFS. We're also going to learn how to share our Google Sheets with others by using real-time collaboration. We'll also look at permissions within Google Sheets so that you can control how others can collaborate with you in them. Hi everybody, let's talk about the list format and sorting in Google Sheets. Now, first of all, I have a practice file open. It's called Trip, Sort, and Filter. It's in with the practice files, so remember, go to the course description and look for the link to access any practice files that go with this course. Now, first of all, what is a list format? Excel also uses this same format for table styles and other analytics tools. In Google Sheets, a list format is where you first of all provide column headers at the top of each column. These help to identify the data below. The other important detail for a list format is that there are no blank rows in your data. The reason blank rows are bad is they're like hitting a pothole when you're driving a car. The analytics can't work. So for example, the sorting and filtering will get stuck when you hit a blank row. Now, blank cells are okay. If you look at the current file that I'm in, I have no entire blank rows, and all my columns are the consistently same kind of information. So with this list format in mind, let's go ahead and look at how to perform a simple sort in Google Sheets. I'm going to come in and actually highlight the range that I'd like to sort by. You don't always have to do this, but I recommend it, especially if your data isn't quite consistent. Once you get all the data highlighted, mine's about 200 rows down. Then what I'm going to do is go back up and go to the Data drop-down menu. This is where your sorting tools are located. You'll notice that you have a Sort Sheet option and a Sort Range. Now, because I have a range selected, which is on purpose, it helps to make my sort more specific. I'm going to go with this second option. You'll come in and you'll notice that I have either the ability to sort the range in column A, or I can come in and go down to advanced range sorting options. When you really want to control your sort, this is what I prefer to do. In this box, I'm going to come in and tell my range that it has a header row. Those are the column headers I mentioned earlier. And you'll notice that when I do this, it helps me to identify what my columns are. In this case, I'm going to pick last name. I can pick my sort order. Remember, there are two. A to Z is ascending, Z to A is descending. And then I'm going to click on sort. Now, if I go up and look at my last name column, you're going to see that now it is alphabetized by last name. So remember, we always want you to try these things out. Go into Google Sheets, try selecting a range, and do your own sorting in Google Sheets. Hi, I want to learn how to do a 2-column sort inside my Google Sheets file. Right now, you'll see that column C, my last names, are sorted by last name. But my problem is if I try to go in and do another sort, this first level sort will be gone. So how do I do a multiple level sort in Google Sheets? Again, I'm going to come in and highlight the data that I want to sort by. This helps Google Sheets to focus on the area that I'll be sorting. Also, remember, I have the list format in my data. I'm going to come back up to the top just so we can really see how this works. Once I get back up to the top of my Google Sheets, I'm going to come back to the Data drop-down menu and come to Sort Range, because right now I have a range of cells selected, not just an entire sheet. Then I'm going to come down to Advanced Range Sorting Options. Now from here, I can see my first level sort, but I want to go ahead and update this so that it has both the sorts I want and it's correct. I'm going to check off that my data has a header row. I'm going to come in and select the last name column for my first level sort in ascending order, A to Z. Then I want to select another sort column. This is add another sort column. And then I want to sort by the amount of tickets. And actually in this case, it's the number of tickets sold in A to Z order as well. So there will be a first level sort, but then when there's a tie in that first level, it will go to the second level. Now to actually perform this sort, I'm going to click on the sort button. Now what we're going to see is there are last names that are sorted. That's my first level sort. But then if I come in and notice After there's a tie in the first level sort, then in ascending order, it's going to go and it will do a sort by the tickets column. So as I come down, I can see that there are 2 sort orders going on here to help me further identify and order, again, my information in my Google Sheets. As always, we want you to try this out. So open up the practice file and try doing a multi-level sort in your own Google Sheet. Hi, I want to be able to filter data in my Google Sheets file. Remember, filtering is different than sorting. When you sort, you reorder the data, but all the data is still there. When you filter, think of going to a public swimming pool. We want to get rid of all the stuff we don't want in that water. Here inside Google Sheets, it's the same idea. We will be hiding the data that doesn't meet the criteria that we set. So how do we perform a filter? Well, first of all, make sure you have a file available to you to use. I'm in the practice file called Trip, Sort, and Filter. Feel free to use this to try out filtering as well. Now I'm going to come up to the toolbar this time. The far right-hand side of the Google Sheets toolbar, you'll see what looks like a funnel. This is how you can turn on filtering at each column level. When I click on this button, you're going to see that the area where I have my column headers highlights. This is another reason why the list format is so useful inside of Google Sheets. Now, next to each of my columns, I see a small set of horizontal lines that are supposed to look like a filter. They kind of do, but this is where you go to perform filtering and sorting at the column level. I love these. Let's try it out by filtering, for example, by the destination column, column E. I'm going to click on the small funnel and you'll notice that I get a couple of options. At the top, I can sort each of my columns in either ascending or descending order. And the great value behind this is that the column header is not included. So you'll notice I just did a descending level sort. Now, when it comes to filtering, I'm going to click back on the small funnel again and come down. You'll notice I can filter based on format, by conditions, by values. Now, in my case, I have text. I see a list of every possible text entry in my destinations column, and they're all checked. If I come down, there's a select all and a clear option. If I say clear, it turns them all off. And then I could just check off the item I want to have filter. Or if there are too many, I can start typing in the one I want in the search box. It locates it for me. I want to make sure there's a check mark next to it. And when I click on OK, it filters by that particular column. Now, what if I want to filter by more than one item? Can I do that? Absolutely. I'll click back on the funnel, come in, and I can just check off the additional things I want to filter by. I could also make sure there's a sort. And once I come in and click on OK, you'll see that it indeed is going to filter and allow me to have more than one item here. Now, how do I turn my filter off? To turn my filter off, I'm just going to go up and click on the funnel. This will remove the filter and turn all my data back on, so it's unhiding it. So as always, we'd love to have you try this out in your own practice file, so go for it. Hey everybody, let's create a filtered view and also a conditional filter inside Google Sheets. Now remember, the list format is a great way to go for this. So the first thing I want to do is create a filter that is for a range of dates. This is a great place to use a conditional filter. I'm clicking inside my Google Sheets file, inside the data. I'm going to go up to the toolbar to the far right-hand side and turn on the Create a Filter button. Again, this gives me the ability to filter at the column level inside my list format. For this, I'm going to come over to the date column and click on the little, again, filtering button. Now, towards the middle of the drop-down menu, you'll see that this gives me an option to filter by condition, which is what I want. Now, there are 3 kind of types of conditions that you can use. You can filter based on text, on dates, and on values. Now, my criteria is a date that is after May 1st. So I'm going to select date is after. Below that, I have to actually tell it what the date is. It's going to be an exact date. And I'm going to come down and enter in a value or formula. Now, just heads up, dates are actually values in programs like Excel and Google Sheets. So I'm going to type in my date, and then I will come down and click on OK. Now, at first, it may not seem like anything's happened, but if I scroll down through the data, you'll notice that it's only showing me dates that happen after May 1st. Now, this is a filter that I will use a lot. What I can do is, rather than just continue redoing the filter whenever I need it, is I'll save the data currently in this view. To do that, I'm going to go back up to the toolbar to the filtering button and click on the little arrow next to it. This gives me an option to save as a filter view, which is what I want to do. Then I'm going to come over to where I see the name of my new filtered view. And what I want to do is click on that and just rename it. I'm going to call it After May 1st. You can put spaces in these filtered view names. All I need to do to finish renaming is hit enter. Now we'll see that my filtered view is turned on. I'm going to turn all my filters off and the filtered view will also be turned off. To do that, I'm going to go back up and just click on my funnel again. Again, you'll notice that when I do this, it gives me an option to say none under my filtered views. Or if I just click away, I can come in and I'm going to just say none. Now we'll see that if I scroll back down, the filter's still in place. So I'm going to go ahead and click anywhere in the data set and click on the funnel again, and it turns the filters off. And notice that all the data is here. Now to return to my filtered view, I'm going to go back up to the arrow next to my filter in the toolbar, and you'll see that any filtered views you've created will show up in a list. I'm going to select my filtered view, and it turns it back on. And I'll notice that any of the dates that don't fit that condition of being after May 1st turn off. And then again, to return to the full list without the filtered view, I'm going to click on the filtering button, say none, the filter turns off, and the filtered view turns off. And at any time you don't want the filtered view anymore, you can click back on the arrow and you'll notice there's an option to delete all filter views. But remember, what we're doing is we're combining a filter with a view so that whenever we need to filter by that item again, we don't have to go back through all the work. We just turn on the view and the view will be there for us. So try this out in your own Google Sheet. Hi, everybody. I want to be able to create a chart inside one of my Google Sheets. Remember, when you create a chart, you're visually representing values or data stored inside your Google Sheets file. It's a great way to help people understand data quickly and easily. Now, one acronym I like to use when I teach people about creating charts is the KISS acronym. Don't be offended by this, but keep it simple, stupid is the KISS acronym. And it basically means keep your charts as simple as possible. If someone can't look at your chart and understand it within just a few seconds, it's probably too complicated. So with that in mind, let's make our own chart inside of Google Sheets. There is a practice file available for this. So remember, if you go to the description, you can open it up. There's a link there. This one is called Charts 101. Now, the first step is to select the data you'd like to chart. I always like to remind people we generally don't include titles and totals when we select our data for a chart. So in this spreadsheet, I am going to highlight cells A3 down to G7. Notice I'm not including A1 because it's a title, and I'm not including row 8 because it's totals. Now to create my chart, I'm going to come up to the Insert drop-down menu and come down to Chart. Now it's automatically going to already assume the type of chart I want. Notice the task pane that's opened up over on the right. This is called the chart editor. Now I can change my chart type immediately by coming right to the very first item under the chart setup tab. These are the different chart types. You have line charts, area charts, par, and bubble. Just keep scrolling down, and then specialty charts. Now generally when you're first starting out, the first 5 categories are going to be the best ones to start with. And you'll also see at the top that based on your data, Google Sheets will make suggestions of charts that might work well with your data. If you want to change your chart type, come down and pick a different chart type, and you'll notice that your chart will update. Now, how do you move this chart around on your sheet? Because your chart resides on top of the cells. Right now, my chart is partially covering up my data. All you need to do to move your chart is come to the corner of it, left drag it. It's like a graphic. Now, I always want to make sure that my chart doesn't overtake my data. I can also come to the corners of my chart. You'll notice there are small squares on the corners and the sides. You can use these to size your chart. And it's a great idea to make sure that your chart doesn't overtake your data. Another thing you can do is you can also come in and right click. When you right click, you'll notice you get a menu that will also help you to adjust your chart. So now that we've created our first chart, I want you to try it out in your own file. They're really easy to make. And again, they're a great way to help people understand the data that's inside your Google Sheet. Hey everyone, I'm ready to edit this chart. So the first thing I need to do is click on my chart so that it's selected. When you select your chart, it makes Google Sheets know that you're interested in your chart. Also, if you come in and just double click on the inside of the chart, you'll notice that the chart editor task pane opens up. Now again, the first side of this is going to allow you to set your chart up by picking chart type, coming in and selecting, for example, whether you want the stack to be at 100% or standard. But another important thing that you can also do here is take the data that's in the legend and switch it with the data that's on your category or x-axes. So let's just learn a little bit about chart terminologies for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and take my chart and drag it over so it's a little bit more front and center and make it a little bit bigger for this. Your legend is, of course, the area where you understand what your different data bars in the chart or the data series are. Usually the x-axis is going to be the horizontal axis on the bottom. The y-axis or value axes will run along either the left or right side. Now you'll notice that at the bottom of the setup, you can actually come in and switch between what's on your legend and your x-axis. By checking this box off, you'll notice that they switch back and forth. Also, there is an area where I can come in and I can also decide if I want, for example, different column labels to be used in my data set. When you really want to customize though, in the chart editor task pane, there is a customize area. This is where you can take the different areas of your chart and change the way they look. Chart style is the overall look of your chart. You'll notice you can do things like make the chart look 3D. You can also set a different background area for your chart area. You can also come in, for example, and set a different color for the border of the chart, just so that's easier to recognize. You can also come in and change the fonts that's being used in titles and legends. In addition to that, you're also going to have an area where you can update the chart axes and include a chart title. Now, I currently have a chart title, but for example, maybe I'd like to put it in bold, and maybe I'd like to change the color to black to make it stick out more. So with each of these areas, you go in and you customize the portion of the chart you'd like to edit. Another important one to be familiar with is the chart legend. This again represents what's in your data bars. Notice here I can actually change where the chart legend goes. Right now my legend is currently on the right. I'd like to move it to the bottom. When I do this, the great thing, I guess I moved it to the top. We'll move it to the bottom instead. The chart adjusts to make room for the legend. So with each of these areas, you're able to go in and further customize the look of your chart. You also have an area where you can come in and customize the series. These will be the different items that are showing inside your chart. And notice you can additionally click on a given area. It will become highlighted. I've just selected the wages data bars or data series. I can come in and actually update the color of those just by selecting them. When they're updated in the chart, they'll also be updated inside my chart legend. So we'd love to have you try this out. Go in and after you've created your chart, try going in and customizing. And there is a practice file for this called Charts 201. So give it a try. Hey everybody, we want to be able to remove items from our chart and also more easily move them around. Again, easy to do, you just have to know where to click. I'm in a practice file called Charts 301. Remember, if you go to the description, you can find a link and go to all the practice files there. I'm going to go ahead and make my chart the focus, so I'm going to click on it and kind of move it around and size it a little bit bigger so we can see it. Now, first of all, how do I remove something from the chart I don't want there? For example, let's say I don't want to see the wages in my chart. Well, I can't just click on them and hit delete, because if I try to click on them, which I can do, they'll get highlighted. But if I hit my delete key, I can't directly delete a data series out of my chart. But what I can do is remove it. So I've clicked on my chart so that the chart editor task pane opens up, and I'm going to go to the setup tab. When I come down, I'll see that each of the sets of data bars are represented by a series. To remove a specific series, I'm going to come to that series, which is called wages in this case, click on the ellipses at the side and say remove. And you'll see what it does is it just removes those data bars out. So now I see my chart without the wages. I'm going to undo that, because now I want to just talk briefly about sizing elements on the chart and removing something you don't want. Let's say, for example, I've decided I do not want a legend. I can click on the legend. You'll see it gets selected. And then if I hit delete on my keyboard, it will remove it. If I ever want to bring it back, I'd go back over to the chart editor task pane, find the legend section, which right now says none, and I just move it back by clicking on the direction or placement of the legend. I can also come to the legend and just left drag it wherever I want it to go on the chart, and it will actually allow me to move different elements. As well, if I'd like to size elements, I can click on a specific part of the chart, come to it, and I can also size it as well. So the charts are very adaptable. It's just a little bit tricky sometimes when you're trying to click on something and move it in conjunction to the rest of the chart. So as always, we'd love to have you try this out on your own. Open up the practice file, try turning some things on and off, also remove some of the series out of the chart. Remember, the undo button will bring them back as long as you haven't yet gotten rid of all your undos, but try this out so you can see how flexible these charts are to editing. Hi everyone, I want to explore a different type of chart. It's an in-cell chart that's great for showing trends on columns or rows of data. It's called a sparkline. They're small, but they're great when you want to see something that's right in line with the data that it's tracking. Now, sparklines are not something you can get by going to the insert drop-down menu like we do for normal charts. They're actually created via a formula. So I've opened up a spreadsheet called Try Sparklines. It's in the practice files. I'd love to have you use this as you follow along with me. I'm clicking in the cell where I'd like my sparkline to go, and then I'm actually going to create a function that will create the sparkline. The first step is to start with your equal sign and then type in sparkline. Now, of course, Google Sheets gets smart and gives you the spelled out sparkline. I could also be typing this up in my formula bar if I wanted to. The next step is to include the range of cells that you'll be trending with your sparkline. You can either type the range in or just highlight it, and you just want to include the values in this case. When you're done, you can hit enter. You don't need the closing parenthesis, and you'll see your little in-cell chart or sparkline, and up in the formula bar, we can see the function that created it. Now, if you'd like to get a little bit fancier, you can include things like the type of chart. Sparklines can be column charts and also line charts. The default is a line chart, as you see here. So I'm now going to come in and click in cell F8, and I'd like to create a column sparkline. For this one, I'm going to start just like I did before by typing the equal sign, typing in the name of my function, selecting it, and then of course highlighting my range, which is A8 through E8. Now, after I do that, I want to continue. I'm going to hit a comma because I need to put in some options. Inside of squiggle brackets, as I call them, I'm going to type in quotes chart type. This lets Google Sheets know that I want to specify the type of chart this sparkline will be. Then I'm going to do a comma, and in quotes again, I'm going to type in the type of chart I want, which is a column chart. I need to enclose this with a closing squiggle and then of course my closing bracket, and then I'll hit enter. And we'll see that for this one, I have both positive and negatives, but it is a column chart. If you ever want to get rid of a sparkline, just click on it, hit delete, and it will take it out. These are something that are pretty easy to add and also pretty easy to take out. And there's more that you can add to them, but start by just creating a few on your own. And again, it's a function, so a little bit different way to create a chart. Try it out. Hey everybody, I want to show you a simple way to help you read down through rows of data. And right now I have a practice file called customer info open. Feel free to use this to try this out. It's called alternating row color. Another thing to notice about my data is it does include header rows at the top of each column, so I know what the data is below, and no blank rows, but blank rows will still work with this activity. All we're going to do is click in any cell inside the data and then go up to the Format drop-down menu and come down to Alternating Colors. This will select my data. I do have a header row. Notice how that's checked off. If I had a bottom row that was a footer row, I could also check it off. Then I'm going to select from one of the pre-built styles. I could also come in and create my own if I wanted to by clicking here, but I can also customize the colors just by going into each one. When I'm finished, I'll click on Done, and you'll see that it's highlighted my header row in a darker shade, and then I have alternating row color based on what I've selected. It's just an easy, simple way to format your data and also make it visually easier to read down row by row. So try it out. Howdy, everybody. We're ready to look at one of my very favorite topics in Google Sheets, creating pivot tables. Now, why pivot tables? If I were to try to take this data set and say that my boss came to me and said, I need to know how many tickets were sold at each of the destinations and then at each of the offices, how would you go about doing that? Well, you could sort, you could filter, you could add some sum functions, but it would really be a pain in the neck. The great news about a pivot table is it allows you to take a really thick, long data set like this one and quickly sort and filter it and also analyze it and calculate it with just a few clicks. Now, a few setup things. Again, pivot tables work best with that list format we mentioned at the very beginning of the course. So I've got column headers at the top and no entire blank rows. This data is only about 200 rows down, so it's not very big. But again, pivot tables can be used to analyze really large data sets. With that in mind, let's make a pivot table. I'm going to click anywhere inside the data, and then I'm going to go up to the Insert drop-down menu and come down to Pivot Table. It's right below Chart. Now, the first step is to pick the range that I'll be pivoting. It's already selected my range because I don't have any entire blank rows, but this button on the right would allow me to drag over the correct range if I needed to. Also, I always suggest the best practice of placing new pivot tables on a new sheet. That way you don't accidentally overwrite any of your existing data. We're ready to go. Let's click on the Create button. Once we click on Create, you'll see that you get a new blank sheet. Again, my original data is still back on sheet 1, and my new pivot table is called Pivot Table 1 or 2, depending on how many you've built. Now, we need to take from our column headers and create our pivot table. A pivot table is not about all your data, it's about focusing on specific pieces of data. So I'm going to start by taking the office field and dropping it in the rows area. I'm going to bring it under here and click on Add. Another way to do this is to actually click on the part of your pivot table by clicking on the Add button and then selecting the field you'd like included. Again, with values, I suggest using value fields. So I'm going to pick my totals field, and you'll see it's now doing a sum based on office. Now, I'd also like to see where this is intersected by the destination that was sold. So I'm going to take destination and drop it under columns. Now, you'll see a lot of blanks when I do this. This is important. Sometimes when you first start using pivot tables, people see these blanks and think, ooh, something's wrong. But it isn't. This is telling me an important piece of information when something didn't happen. Now, additionally, I can also filter my entire pivot table by taking a filter down or a field down to this filters area. We'll see that the filter will be available to me right here. When I click on it, I can actually perform a filter, and it will filter my entire pivot table in place. When I'm done, I can turn it off just by coming back, clearing it, saying select all, and it turns it off. Now, to edit my pivot table is also really easy. Let's say instead of the total field, I'd like to see the number of tickets sold. I can actually remove the total field by clicking on this X, and I can bring down a different field under my values area. Now I'm seeing the number of tickets that were sold at each office for each destination. I could also actually remove the destination, and we'll see that my pivot table will totally adjust. Now, have any of these changes impacted the data on sheet 1? Let's check it out. I'm going back to my original sheet. Nothing has happened. The beauty of a pivot table is that you can analyze specific columns of data in your pivot table, but your source data never adjusts. One important thing to remember about pivot tables is that you have to make sure that your source data on sheet 1 is refreshed with your pivot table. But the great news about Google Sheets is that they automatically refresh with each other. So try out a pivot table of your own inside the practice file. It's called Customer Pivot. You'll see how amazing and quick these are to analyze your data. All right, so we've learned how to make a pivot table. Now we're ready to make a pivot chart. Now, one thing I want to mention is in this file that I've opened in Google Sheets, it's called Customer Pivot and Chart. You can use it as well when you want to make a pivot chart. This data is too thick for me to chart. This is one of the reasons that pivot charts are so important. They allow you to basically focus on specific pieces of data in a big data set and chart those. I have a pivot table in this data set on the second sheet. So I'm going to click on Pivot 1, and it's going to take me to my pivot table. Let's zoom in on it just a little bit. Once I've done that, what I want you to do is come in and I want to create a pivot chart. So I've clicked in my pivot table. I'm now going to go up to the insert drop-down menu and come to chart, just like we would to create a normal chart. But because it's in a pivot table, it creates a pivot chart. Now, for the most part, pivot charts are going to operate a lot like a normal chart. You'll notice you can right-click on the chart and come in and get lots of options to edit the chart. But additionally, you also have the chart editor task pane that opens up. At the top of the chart editor task pane, you can actually change to different types of charts. So there are additional types beyond just a pie chart. You have, again, line charts, area charts, column charts. Some of the specialty charts may not work quite as well. So just again, be sure that you can kiss your chart, right? You want to make sure that you're keeping it simple so it's easy to understand. After you've made the change to the chart type, don't forget that you can go to the Customize ribbon to come in, for example, and update things like the chart border. Also, you can come in and change the chart fonts, right? And even the background color of your chart. So all the same things that you use to edit your chart in a normal chart can be used here. But the beauty of this is that we've been able to take something like this, focus it with a pivot table, and create a pivot chart. Now, the final thing I want you to remember about the pivot chart is that it's based on the pivot table. So let's say, for example, that I come in and I have a filter on my pivot chart right now. It's showing all items. But let's say, for example, that I clear and only show the first, for example, 5 days of data. When I do that, notice that my pivot chart also will update based on what's in my pivot table. So the pivot chart and the pivot table are always based on each other. And when you edit your pivot table, your pivot chart will follow suit. But try making a pivot table and then create a chart and see how easy it is to take a very thick data set and really drill into it and create a chart based on that. Welcome back. I want to show you another way to refer to cells other than their cell name. Now we know that whenever you click in any cell, like I've just clicked in cell A2, that directly to the left of the formula bar in the name box, we'll see the cell reference. But sometimes I might want to name an individual cell like this one, or an entire group of cells a different name. This can be useful when you're trying to do formulas, for example, or even just select a certain group of cells. Now, right now, this group of cells is known by the sheet that they're on, which is the expenses sheet, and then the range B4 through B7. A named range will really simplify this naming construct with just a name. So let's go ahead and create a named range. Remember, there's a practice file for this called name range in the practice files. So if you go to the description of the course, you can access those practice files, and I suggest it for this. Now, to create a named range, I've highlighted my cells, in this case B4 through B7. Then I'm going to come up to the data drop down and come down to named ranges. It's directly above named functions. You'll see over on the right hand side that my named ranges task pane opens up. I currently don't have any named ranges in this spreadsheet, but I'm going to create one. Now right now you'll see that it's putting in a default named range 1 name for my current cells. It also shows me the references, the sheet name, and then of course B4 through B7. When you create a named range, you can't put spaces in the name. So if you need spaces, use hyphens or underscores, and you can't use a current cell range. So I couldn't, for example, take this range of cells and call it B1 because that's already a cell reference. I'm just going to give it the simple name of January, and then I'll click on done. Now I'll see my named range here in the named ranges list. This pencil next to it would allow me to edit that range, but these will save with my workbook and always be here. I'd like to continue this process. I'm now going to come in and highlight cells C4 through C7 and come back up and click on Add a Range in the Named Ranges task pane. And I bet you can't guess what I'm going to call this. Yeah, this is going to be my February named range. I'm just going to keep it February to keep it simple. And finally, I'm going to do the same thing for D4 through D7 and add a range there. So when I'm done, I'll have 3 named ranges, one called Feb, one called Jan, and one called March. And I'd love to have you go into your spreadsheet and try this out. Final thing we want to do is actually make these into a formula. Rather than using cell ranges and formulas like we've done previous in this course, you can use your named range to replace the range of cells that you'd normally use. Let's try this out. I'm going to close my named ranges task pane and go to cell B8 where I want to put in my function. Remember, you start with an equal sign, type in the function name that you want. I'm going to double click on it. Now I know that I could use cell references here, but instead I'd like to use my named range. As I start typing it in, Google Sheets recognizes that I want to use a named range here. Notice the icon next to my January named range. This is the icon that represents a named range as opposed to a cell reference. I'm going to click on it. I need to use my closing parenthesis and hit enter, and it finishes the formula for me. I can do the same thing in cells C8 and D8. Again, I hit an equal sign, start my formula. In this case, I don't want to use the named range that it's suggesting, so I'll just bypass that. Then I'll start typing in the name of my named range. You'll see it bring up the named range for me. Double click on it, and it finishes it. So why is this a good idea? Sometimes when you're working with groups of people who may not be so familiar with formulas, this can help simplify and help them understand what the formula is doing. Also, when you do formulas that require absolute references, these named ranges are always absolute. And remember, if you need to go back and edit them, all you do is go up to the Data drop-down menu, come to Named Ranges, and your named ranges will be in this list. One final warning, if you accidentally delete one of these named ranges, I'm just going to show you what happens. So if I come in and click on the trash can next to one of my named ranges, you'll notice that your formula, if you delete it, will continue to work, but what you're going to see right here is in the formula bar, you're going to get a number sign reference error message because the computer is continuing to do it, but the actual formula itself cannot recognize the correct range. So it will continue to show you the right total, but if you need to edit this, you'd have to fix your formula. So that's one thing to be careful about with named range. Hey everyone, I want to show you one of my favorite functions. It's called an if function. Now, if functions are very common and they're based on the idea that a formula can have a true or false. So you start with what's called a logical test. Is this greater than this? Is this equal to this? Then you have what to do if that's true. And then if it's not true, you have a false portion. So if functions in their simplest form have three different parts: the logical test, and the what to do if that's true or what to do if that's false. They're very popular. Now here in my practice file that's called if functions, and remember, we'd love to have you try this out, so find it with the practice files. I need to calculate if my sales reps are going to get a bonus. If they've sold over $7 million of product, they get a bonus. But if they haven't, they don't get anything. But I'd like to put a text message in the formula that will say no bonus. So to start, I'm clicking in cell 03, and I'm going to create my first if function. So I type an equal sign and the word if. Then of course I'm going to double click. Now the first part of this function is going to be my logical test. My logical test is, was their sales total that's in N3 greater than or equal to, which I'm going to of course type on my keyboard, 7 million. That's me counting zeros. Then I'm going to do a comma. Now, if that's true, then I again want to take their sales total and multiply it by 5%. That will be their commission rate. Now, what if they don't sell more than $7 million in product? They haven't met the logical test. So now we have to say what to do if it's false. Well, I could just put in a 0, but it's easier for me to understand no bonus. So to enter a text string, I'm going to do a quote and then type in the text message, which is no space bonus, all contained within quotes. So you'll see here that I have the name of the function. The logical test is N3 greater than or equal to 7 million. Then I have what to do if that's true. Take N3 and multiply it by 5%. If it's false, inside quotes, because it's a text string, I will put no bonus. Each of the portions of the functions are separated by commas. When I'm done, I'll hit enter. Now, based on that, you're going to see right here that it's already telling me, well, it looks like this salesperson is getting a $400,000 bonus. Now, this is a function that you can drag down using the AutoFill handle, which I'm going to do. And you'll see again, when they meet the true portion of the formula, they get the bonus. When they are under $7 million in product, then they don't get the bonus. And this text message is in a lot of ways easier for me to understand. And so again, it's a great formula because you can have a true and a false. So try it out. Welcome back. I want to show you how to do a nested function. Now I'm in a practice file called nested functions, so please feel free to open it up and use it for this activity. In this spreadsheet, I'm trying to figure out how to do my bonus schedule. I've started in column E by using an if statement. So if we open this up, we'll notice that based on their order total, if it's greater than 2,000, they'll get a 5% bonus. If not, no bonus for them. We can see it's working fine. But I've also noticed right here that the average of all my order totals is 2,100. So I'm wondering if I could just use that to calculate whether someone gets a bonus. And I want it to just say yes or no, a different approach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in cell F1, and I'm going to start by my first function, which will be the if statement. So we're going to do an equal sign and type the word if. And then, of course, an opening parenthesis. Now, right here, I need my logical test, but this is where I'm actually going to start getting ready to do my second function. So we know that it's based on the order total, which is D2, and it needs to be greater than the average of all the order totals. Well, I'm going to actually begin another function. I'm going to type the word average. Notice that it already will give me an opening parentheses if I'm using those helps that Google Sheets provides. Now, how do I reference this? Well, I'm going to highlight the range of cells that need to be averaged, D2 through D10. This does need to be included inside parentheses because it's the innermost function. Now I need to finish out my if function. So I'm going to type a comma. Now, if that's true and they are going to get the bonus, I'm going to type the word yes. Because again, it's a text statement, so it needs to be included in quotes. Now, if that's false, if they didn't order a total over the average, I'm going to type the word no. So now I'm finishing out my second formula, which is the if statement. The other thing that's really important is that you have the same number of parentheses going in, that you end with that same number of parentheses. I have 2 parentheses going in and I have 2 parentheses going out. When I'm done, I'll hit enter. Now we'll notice that based on that, I guess this particular person did not make the average. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this function down, and then we'll just look at it briefly. You'll notice that if, again, I look at the function, the 2 people that met the average total are right here, and it says yes for both of them. So if we look at the formula, we're going to see again, if is the first function, then I have the beginning of the logical test, but then part of the logical test is the second nested function, followed by parentheses, and then my logical test, which is yes for true and no for false. So this is the beginnings of what nested functions look like. These can get really complicated, but they're a really powerful way to do multiple calculations all in one formula. Howdy, I want to show you one of my favorite Google Sheets functions. It's called VLOOKUP. It stands for vertical lookup. Now let me explain this function to you. It has 5 primary arguments. The goal of VLOOKUP is to allow you to look a value up out of a range based on something to the left. So for example, in my practice file, which is called VLOOKUP, feel free to use it to try this out. You're going to see that I have customer numbers in column A. Now what I'd like to do is to be able to come in and type in a customer number here in column M, cell M2, and then I'd like it to tell me the yearly cost of tickets from the yearly cost column. So the goal is that the VLOOKUP will actually come into the table at the left, find customer number 12, count over 9 columns, and return exactly what's in the same row in the 9th column, a vertical lookup through columns. Let's try it out. I'm going to put my formula in cell N2. Feel free to click there and try it out as well in the practice file. You always start with an equal sign like we always have, and then the word VLOOKUP. Again, notice how Google Sheets always has lots of helps as you go through. You'll have an opening parenthesis. Now, the first part of this function is going to be called what's called your search key, which is over here in cell M3. So I'm going to click there, or an M2, I should say, and it enters that my lookup value or my search key will be the customer number that I've typed to the left. Next, I'm going to put in a comma because I now need my range of cells that I'll be looking through. So I'm going to come in and highlight all the data in the table at the left. It's going to be cells A1 all the way down to J23. Now, the third portion of my function is going to be the index column. This has to be a positive integer or number. So I can't put in I, which is the column the yearly cost is in. I have to just count over so I can provide a positive number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The value I want returned or the information is in column 9. So that will be my column index number. Now there's still a fourth argument that's very important with VLOOKUP. Am I trying to find an exact match or an approximate match? In my case, it needs to be an exact match because this is a client number. It's not something that will be repeated again. I don't have 2 customers with the number 12. So if it's an exact match, you need to enter the word false. If it was an approximate match, you could actually just type in true or not even put it into the formula. But if you need an exact match, you must enter the false. Very important. So again, what is my function doing if we look at it? Well, it's coming in, it's going to the left-hand column of the range and finding my customer number. Then it's counting over 9 columns and returning exactly what's on the same row. Now, could I type in a different customer number, like 15, for example, and would that work? Let's check it out. Here's 15, and if I count over 9 columns, the yearly cost is going to be returned by my VLOOKUP. These are very popular and very common, so try them out because chances are you will run into these. Hi, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to combine 2 functions that we've already used to create SUMIF and AVERAGEIF functions. Now, just as the name implies, these functions will only sum something if certain criteria is met, or only average something if certain criteria is met. I'm in a practice file called SUMIF and AVERAGEIF. Feel free to use it so you can follow along. I'm going to start with the SUMIF function. So I'm clicked right here in cell K2. To start this function, you do an equal sign and type the word SUMIF, all one word. Now, this particular function has 3 basic arguments. The first thing we need is the range of cells that our criteria is based on. For me, it's the destination. Notice in column E that I've sorted the destinations. It makes it easier to check and see if the function is really working. So I want to select all those destinations, but not include cell E1 because it's the column heading. To do this, I love the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-Down arrow. Notice it selects all my destinations down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, but nothing underneath of that. Now, the next thing I need to do is a comma. I now need my criteria. This is Cancun. Because it's text, I need to include it in quotes. If it was a value, I wouldn't need to do that, or a date. The third thing I need is my sum range. What column am I going to be summing? In this case, it's everything below H1. So I'm going to click in H2 and do the same keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-Down arrow. Now, of course, I need to enclose the whole thing in parentheses, and I'm going to hit Enter. If I scroll up a little bit, I'll see here that my total is 2972. Now, here's what you can do. I can actually come into my spreadsheet and highlight those cells E13 to E21 because that's the range of my Cancun destinations. And then I'm going to come over and highlight the total column as well for all of Cancun, and then just highlight those values. If I come down to the bottom right-hand corner where Google Sheets does its auto calculations, I'm going to see that indeed the sum of all the Cancun destinations is 2952. So this is letting me see that the function worked. Let's try it with an average. This time we want to find the average of the total of tickets sold to Boston. Very similar formula. I'm going to click in cell N2, hit an equal sign, and type the word average if. And again, it does the same thing, but this time we're going to be averaging based on criteria. The next thing I need is my criteria range. Again, it's going to be based on destination. So I'm going to select E2 through E63. Hit a comma. Now I need my criteria. In quotes, I'll type Boston, making sure that I spell it correctly, followed by a comma. Now, what am I averaging this time? It's actually the same column, column H under the total. So I'll do Control-Shift down arrow to get the range of H2 through H63. Then I'll hit enter because there's only one parenthesis. I actually don't need to put the ending one on. Now I can see the total it's giving me for the average. Again, I'm going to come into the spreadsheet and highlight all my Boston destinations and go over to include the total column. Then if I just highlight the Boston destinations here, you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, it shows me that it's auto-calculating a sum. But if I click on that, I can also have it do an average. Now down here, it rounds, which is 531. But up here in the spreadsheet, I can see that if I rounded this, it would be 531. So this is a fantastic way to only sum or average based on if certain criteria are met. All right, let's try out something a little bit trickier. This is a function that is combining sum and if, but gives you the ability to have two different criteria. It's called SUMIFS. Now there is a practice file for this in the practice files folder, so click on the link in the description. It's called SUMIFS and AVERAGEIFS. I'm going to be on the SUMIFS sheet for this. So I want to come in and click in cell B5. Let me describe this spreadsheet to you briefly. You're going to see that it's about grocery delivery totals. One column are the items that have been purchased. The second one is the amount. And the third is going to be the status, whether they're delivered, in transit, or canceled. I need to come in and anywhere where toilet paper has been delivered, I need to total the amount that's been purchased. This is a good example of using a SUMIF function because I have two different criteria. The item has to be toilet paper and it has to be delivered. I'm going to click in cell B5 to create my SUMIF function. I'm going to hit an equal sign, and then this is all one word, SUMIFS. Now remember that Google Sheets does a great job with giving you suggestions, so don't be afraid to use them. The first thing it's telling me here is I need a sum range. Well, the range of cells I'm summing are going to be B8 down to B18. I'm going to hit a comma. The next thing I need is my first criteria range. This is the item type. So I'm going to highlight B8, in this case, A8 to A18. And then you're going to see that it's going to ask me for a third thing, which is the actual criteria. In this case, it's toilet paper. And I have this listed in cell B3. So I'm going to click up there. So that's my first collection of criteria. Now I need to set my second one, which is based on the status. So again, I'm going to highlight column C8 through C18. Do a comma, and again, the criteria for this is whether it's been delivered. So I'm going to click in cell, in this case, B5. And then I need to enclose the entire thing in a parenthesis, and I'm going to hit enter. Now what I see here is that when the two criteria are met, that it's toilet paper and it's been delivered, it adds those two amounts up, which is 200. Now toilet paper is also listed here, but notice that in that case, it's canceled or it's in transit. So therefore, it only sums where it equals the two criteria, that it's toilet paper and it's been delivered. Super fun function. Hey everybody, I want to show you another function that combines the ability to have two criteria before something can be averaged. This is called the AVERAGEIFS function. It's very similar to the SUMIFS, but it does an average rather than a sum. I'm also in the practice file called SUMIF and AVERAGEIF, and I'm on the second sheet called AVERAGEIFS. Now what I have in this sheet are a list of products, quantities sold, and then a sales rep in column C and the actual product name in column B. Here's my scenario. I only want the products to be averaged if Tom was the salesperson and they were apples. Pretty simple, but there is a function that will do all that for me. So I'm going to come down to cell C9 and type an equal sign and then begin my function name, which is AVERAGEIFS. All one word, and don't forget the S, it's really important. Then the next thing I need to do is get what I'm averaging. In this case, it's going to be A5 to A8. That's my average range. The next thing I need is my first criteria. Now, this is if the product was apples. So first of all, I need to highlight my products, which are B2 to B8, then do a comma, and then in parentheses, I need to type what the criteria is, which is apples. The reason it's in quotes is because it's text. If it was just a value, I wouldn't need to put it in quotes. Now I need to do my second set of criteria. And remember that Google Sheets has all these built-in helps to let you know what portion of the function you're on. I'm on my second criteria range. Now in this case, it's the sales reps. So I'm going to do C2 to C8, hit a comma. And now I'm at the part of the function where I need my second criteria within that range. In this case, it's if the sales rep was Tom. So there are two criteria. Is the product apples? Was Tom the sales rep? Then average it. I'm going to hit enter. Now we're going to see right here, the average based on that is 4.5. Let's check it out. Here I can see that Tom sold apples for a total of 5 and 4. If we average that, it would come to 4.5. So again, it's a simple function, but because it can be based on criteria, you can allow it to let you only average based on 2 different items. Hey everybody, let's talk about a way to make sure that when there might be an error that occurs inside one of your Google Sheets functions or formulas, that you can actually control the error message that comes back. Now we've probably seen this in Google Sheets. If you haven't, it's common for there to be error messages, like you're seeing in the spreadsheet on my screen right now. You can also see other ones. They usually start with, again, a hashtag symbol followed by the particular error message that's being displayed. This one is happening because I'm dividing by 0, which we know equals 0, but again, Google Sheets thinks I'm making a mistake. This is the practice file called IFERROR, and I want to show you how you can control these error messages by actually putting in your own if error when they occur. Now, if error will return the first argument if it is not an error value. Otherwise, it returns the second one. So you're going to see right here that, again, I'm getting the divide by 0 error message because I'm taking A3 and dividing it by B3. And we know that when we divide something by an empty cell, we get 0. So hence I get this divide by 0 error. But instead, what I'd like to do is edit this and put in the if error instead, so that if this does happen, it just shows a 0. To do this, I'm going to go to my first formula and actually edit it, even though it's working, and then drag it down and it will fix my divide by 0 error message. So I'm going up to the first formula in the formula bar, and in front of the equal sign, I'm going to type if error. Then I'm going to enclose it in parentheses. And again, we're going to see right here, if it's divided by 0, then I'm going to put a comma. Rather than doing the error message, just put in a 0. So if there is an error, then put in the 0. I'll hit enter. Now the formula works fine, so there is no error message involved, but I'm going to copy the formula down. Notice now instead of the, again, divide by 0 error message, I just see a 0 because that might be exactly what I want it to do. There are many other use cases for if error. This is just a simple example of a way to override those built-in formula error messages with something that you want. In this case, a 0, because that's what it should be. Hi everyone, I want to show you how you can use functions to reshape your data. So I'm right now in a practice file called left and right, and we're actually going to use both of those functions to pull specific pieces of data out of a column. I'm going to come into column A and insert a new column by right-clicking on the left-hand side of that. And I'm going to call this new column month. Now notice that my months are only January through June. So they're only one character in the short date format. And there are date time functions, by the way, that do this, but I want to show you how you can also use the left function to accomplish a similar thing. I'm going to start my function in cell B2 by hitting an equal sign and then the word left. Then I'm going to do an opening parenthesis. Now, the first thing I need to do is tell it what cell it's working with. In this case, it's A2. Then I'm going to do a comma and tell it how many characters from the left to return. I only need one because it's the month. Then I'll hit enter. And you'll see that for each month, and my autofill actually comes up. By the way, if this doesn't happen, you can always come in and just use your fill handle to drag it down. It's returning the first thing at the left-hand side of each of my cells. Now, what if there's something on the far right, for example? It's not uncommon to have, for example, numbers combined with information in cells. Right here, you're seeing my office name column, column E, but it also actually includes the office number location at the end, and I need that. So I'm going to insert a new column to the left of column F by right-clicking. Then I'm just going to call office number. And then I'm going to use what's called the right function to get the last 4 characters off the right-hand side of a cell. So again, I start with an equal sign. I'm clicked in cell F2, and I'm going to type in the name of the function, right. I need to start with the cell that I'm going to be collecting the characters from. So I click in cell E2 in this case, followed by a comma, and then the number of characters in from the right-hand side of the cell that I will be, again, returning, which is 4. I could do a closing parenthesis, but as you know at this point, we don't need it because there's only one set. I'll hit enter. Now again, the autofill comes up, and if I take its suggestion, it's now pulling the last 4 characters out of each of the cells to the left and putting them into my office number column for me. Feel free to use these formulas to help you reconfigure data in spreadsheets so you're not spending time having to type it in. Hi everyone, let's look at how you can rework data in your spreadsheets by combining 2 columns of data together using an awesome function called concatenate. There's a practice file for this called concatenate, and this function can save you a tremendous amount of time. Here's my goal. Column B has the first names. Column C has the last names. I want them to be together in one column. So the first step is to right-click on column header D and insert a new column to the left. This column I'm just going to type as full name because that's what I want here. In cell D2, I'll create my first concatenation function. I'm going to hit the equals sign to start my function and then start typing in the word concatenate. It's a little tricky to spell, so make sure you pick the correct function name if you don't know how to spell it. The first thing I need to do is select the first cell that I will be bringing together, which in this case is cell B2. Then I'm going to do a comma. Now the thing that's tricky here is I need a space between my first text string and my second. The formula does not assume that space. So in quotes, I'm actually going to put a space to represent that before the first text string and the second text string, I need a space between them. Then I need a comma and my second cell, which is C2. Now this should all be enclosed in parentheses and I'll hit enter. Now my autofill comes on, which is mighty convenient. If it doesn't, remember, this is a formula. So if you click on the cell with the formula, get your crosshair and drag down, it auto-fills it in. Let's just look at the function again really briefly. Concatenate, then take the first cell, comma. If you need a space between the text strings, you have to allocate that in quotes, and then the second cell. And voila, it combines them. Can you do more than one column? Absolutely. Great way to save yourself having to retype everything the long way. Hi everybody, I'm in Google Sheets and I want to be able to share a file with someone who also uses Google. The great thing about Google Sheets is because all your files save to Google Drive automatically, it's really easy to share them. So the file I'm in right now is called Practice Share. Feel free to use it to try this out. You will need someone that you know that you can try to share the file with to test drive. To share the file, I'm going to go to the top right-hand corner of my open Google Sheets and click on the Share button. The Share file box opens up. The first thing I need to do is either type in the email address or select from an existing group of people that I've already shared the file with. You could also paste in the email address. And I've already shared with this person before, so I select their name. Over on the right, I need to select the type of sharing that I'm going to do. Viewer means the file will be shared in read-only mode. Commenter means they can leave comments on the file but not actually change it. And editor gives them full editing rights. I can also include a message. And then I'm going to click on send. Now the file's been shared. After a file's been shared, it will tell me the access has been updated. If I ever need to go back into the file and see who it's been shared with, all I need to do is go to the top right-hand corner, click on the share button. It'll open up and show me currently that I'm the owner, and whoever I've shared it with will be right here in the list. And again, if I ever need to edit those sharing rights, notice I can come right here, change the type of sharing that I'm doing, or remove access to the sharing. Try sharing your files through Google Sheets and Google Drive. It's really easy. Hi everyone, I want you to actually see what real-time collaboration looks like inside Google Sheets. This means that you've shared a file with someone and they are also in Google Sheets in the file with you. Now, I'm currently in the practice file. I would need to have shared this file with someone and have them open it up at the same time. They will receive a link in their inbox and they'll see the shared Google Sheets file in that link. All they need to do is click on the link and Google Sheets will open and the file will open. Now, how do I know that someone else is in this file? Well, I'm going to see that there are 2 active cells. So the person I'm playing right now is here in cell A1, but my coworker is right here in cell, in this case, in column D. Now, if this coworker comes in and starts making changes in my spreadsheet, I'll see their changes. So for example, I'm going to have them make a change down in column, or in this case, row 15. Notice that as that change happens, I see it real time. And if, for example, they add another particular comment, I'll see it as they type. Now, do we have to worry about saving things? We don't, because everything saves as we go. The other way that I can know who exactly is in the Google Sheet with me is to go to the top right-hand corner. I'll see my coworker's name in a small circle, or their initial. And then I can also see myself as well. There's a chat pane where we could come in and add chats to the file that we're working in, but everything saves. And if I were to close the Google Sheet, my person that I've shared it with could continue to work in the file. And remember, anytime you want to stop this real-time collaboration and file sharing, you can always go back to the share button and manage the rights that you've provided to the file from this menu. But it's a fantastic way to work, and it works in all the Google suite. So not only Google Sheets, but also some of the other Google applications. So try it out. Hey everybody, have you ever wanted to have additional functionality inside Google Sheets? Well, you can. The great thing about Google is it's open source, so it means that there are a lot of other applications that you can bring into your Google platform to really maximize your experience. From any Google Sheets file, if you go up to the drop-down menus and click on Extensions, you're going to see the Add-Ons button. This is going to allow you to access the add-ons that are available through Google Sheets, and this is a list that continues to grow. I'm going to come in and select Get Add-Ons. It takes me into the Google Workplace Marketplace. Now, some of these cost and some of them are free, but what you can do is come in and notice under Price, you can say free of charge if you just want to see free add-ons. In addition, when you find one that you'd like to try out, you click on it. There will be an install option. This will then ask you to allow you to add it to your Google Sheets experience. You install the application. You also have to make sure that you allow it for your correct Google account. Once it's installed, you'll see that it'll be available to you. To ever manage add-ons that you've added, you can come to the extensions menu and come down to, I'll now see the different extensions I just added right here, or add-ons. But if I need to manage my add-ons, I can go to Add-Ons, then Manage Add-Ons, and I'll see them in this list. If I'd ever like to uninstall something I've added, I click on the dots and say Uninstall, and it will remove it from my Google Sheets experience. But this is an area where you can explore tons of great additional tools that will really make your experience inside Google Sheets more useful and easy. Feel free to check out the add-ons, and again, it's a list that continues to grow and change as more tools are created. So definitely try it out. Hi everybody, let's say that you want to be able to create your own custom content from Google Sheets or in Google Sheets. To do this, you need to access an area called Google Apps Scripts. Now, Google Apps Scripts is an addition to your Google Sheets. What it does is it provides a rapid application development platform that lets you create your own applications that, again, integrate with the rest of the Google Workspace. You can write your code in modern JavaScript and have access to libraries that allow you to get access to great applications that work within Gmail, Calendar, Drive, and even Google Sheets. Now, where do you go to access this area? You're going to come into Extensions in the drop-down menus and go to Apps Script. This will open up a separate window, again, where you can actually create your own custom modules of JavaScript code that could either add customized apps to your Google Sheets application or to other parts of the Google Workspace. Now, if you're not quite sure what these look like or what they could do for you, I'm going to close the tab that, again, my App Scripts project is opened in and go back to Google Sheets. A good way to just explore possibilities here is to go to Extensions again, come down to App Sheet, and you'll see that there are available samples that you can view that have been created by others. This will actually take you into the app templates, and you can see here that you can create, for example, a Kanban board or a workspace booking app. And you can see here that they'll give you opportunities to explore the app or even to copy it and make it into your own. And these are considered a low code, no code tool where you don't really have to know JavaScript. But again, this is an area where I do recommend learning some of the code, because when you start customizing the app, you can see that it's going to get a little bit tricky if you don't have knowledge. So this is definitely an area that will take a tremendous amount of time to skill up on, but it's really exciting that Google's opened their applications and their platform to allow you to bring in custom content. So definitely think of it as an opportunity to upskill and really learn some powerful tools to help you customize your Google Sheets experience. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on our part 2 of Google Sheets learning experience. We've done everything from sorting and filtering to creating pivot charts and pivot tables. We've also explored some advanced functions like VLOOKUP and if statements, and even SUMIF and AVERAGEIF. Don't forget real-time collaboration inside of Google Sheets, and even how you can further extend what Google Sheets can do with add-ons and even Google Scripts. Now, as always, please like and subscribe to these videos and sign up and attend more of the Learnit Anytime video courses. They're a great way to upskill and expand your workplace opportunity.